In that fateful year, early 2367, 40 Starfleet vessels engaged a threat the likes of which the Federation had never seen. The Borg Collective's vessel completely obliterated 39 ships of the 40 that showed up to fight. 11,000 Starfleet officers and their families were killed, assimilated, or pronounced missing in action. The attack was precise. The attack was devastating. It was precipitated by the Borg becoming aware of the Federation when an entity known as the Q introduced the Enterprise D to them. The Enterprise had supposedly been on a mission of exploration outside of Federation territory, and thus what occurs to it not able to be observed. But is that the real story? Could the Battle of Wolf 359 actually have been a completely preventable slaughter that was orchestrated by a Starfleet Borg alliance? And was there a larger plan in place for allowing all of these people to die? What's the likelihood that an organization with over 150 member planets, all of which had to have faster than light travel and starships independently to be accepted as members, would have only had 40 vessels to defend the core? And if that's all they had, how come any of these ships survived given how old and antiquated they are? Well, most of them didn't. Let's take a look at one of them that did. The Enterprise D, after failing to defeat the Borg in multiple encounters before, was able to finally trick the Borg cube into exploding after sending a sleep code that was given to them by a traitorous Starfleet officer. Picard had earlier been assimilated by the Borg and was spearheading the attack against the Federation. He ultimately was able to tell the crew of the Enterprise D how to defeat the Collective. Picard, before being assimilated, had believed firmly that the Federation was not a military organization. So what made him the hero in this instance? Well, one thing might be all of his different connections. Q is a powerful entity that supposedly met Picard and his crew during the mission at Encounter at Farpoint. According to Starfleet Command, the Q would continue to harass the Enterprise and her crew. During one of these interactions, Q introduced the Enterprise to the Borg, a civilization of aggressive cybernetic humanoids. Why would the Q do this, and what sense did it make? We've never gotten a real answer. Many question even how Starfleet could be so ill-prepared after meeting the Borg. Military strategists and experts outside the influence and careful watch of Starfleet and Federation intelligence agencies were baffled at the seeming lack of ability by Starfleet to stop just one ship. Could they really be so inept as to not be able to defend themselves? Were Starfleet military strategists that stupid? Well, maybe they weren't. To understand what really happened on that fateful day, we first have to go back to the year 2293. After the destruction of the Klingon moon Praxis, due to a lack of Klingon safety protocols, another instance that is highly suspect, the Federation, by the insistence of Special Delegation and Captain Spock, agreed to scale down its military and assist the Klingon Empire in rebuilding. This was met with extreme resistance from Starfleet military strategists that recognized the extreme danger this presented.
I must protest. To offer Klingons safe haven within Federation space is suicide. Klingons would become the alien trash of the galaxy. And if we dismantle the fleet, we'd be defenseless before an aggressive species with a foothold on our territory.
As well as Starfleet heroes.
Captain Kirk, the Klingons have never been trustworthy. I'm forced to agree with Admiral Cartwright. This is a terrifying idea.
But against Starfleet Command recommendations, the peace treaty is signed and Starfleet's military capabilities are severely diminished. A domino effect soon occurs as Starfleet continues to meet more and more threats that it has problems in dealing with. The return of the Romulans, the Ferengi, and even Klingon marauders plague a crumbling Starfleet and its ability to defend its citizens. The official line is that Starfleet was an exploratory organization and combat was the minor purview of a captain. But what was really happening in the background? Well, given all the strife that is happening, maybe Starfleet security saw Wolf 359 coming, and they didn't do anything. What if, after meeting with the Borg, military elements within Starfleet and the Federation finally saw their chance to regain control of the Federation Council and Starfleet Command? Based on official sources, we know that Starfleet had been working on creating weapons to counter the Borg, but thanks to anti-war sentiments, the process was very, very slow. Is it possible that admirals weren't surprised when outlying colonies suddenly go missing? And then, conveniently after sending the Enterprise D to investigate, Captain Picard is allegedly abducted by the Borg and turned into Locutus. Why hadn't the Borg captured or used captains from other vessels or the colonies they had already assimilated? Certainly there are others that had the same technical information that he had, and they wouldn't have had to fight as hard. What was so special about this captain? Once the man was supposedly assimilated, he would then lead the collective forces. After all of this, the Enterprise D conveniently tries to fight back and is disabled due to it using too much power and not able to meet up with the fleet at Wolf 359. Somehow, the warp core, which gives an immeasurable amount of power, would be drained. And then, Picard as Locutus continued on to Wolf 359. When looking at it, how likely is it really that Picard would betray the Federation? According to recorded audio, the Admiral of the fleet certainly didn't believe it.
I never met anyone with more drive, determination, or more courage than Jean-Luc Picard. And there is no way in hell that he would assist the Borg. I want that clear.
For some reason, the most powerful ship in the fleet isn't available at the titular battle with mostly mothballed vessels that are destroyed, they being so easily dispatched due to Picard helping the collective. The vessels that fought that day were decades to centuries old. The Borg cube, after obtaining a strategic victory, would continue to Earth, which was completely undefended. The President and Starfleet security immediately declared martial law, forcing people into their homes and to stay put. And after the rumored attack on Earth was thwarted, Starfleet was granted permission to create ships like the Defiant, Akura, and Sovereign classes, undeniably vessels made for war. The attack on Wolf 359 gave Starfleet security everything it needed to justify the creation of behemoths of war. Starfleet security and the presidential branch of the Federation grow exponentially and are granted bilateral powers, including the ability to create and stockpile weapons. Overnight, Starfleet is changed and moved from an exploratory organization to a militaristic one. But what about the crew of the Enterprise? Wouldn't they have given it away? After Wolf 359, everyone associated with both the Q and the Borg ultimately had gruesome fates. Lieutenant Commander Data would be killed during a Romulan attack. The only witness that claims he sacrificed himself was, you guessed it, Jean-Luc Picard, formerly Locutus of the Borg. Both O'Brien and Worf are transferred to a backwater station in the Bajoran sector, far, far away from the Federation seat of power. Picard, after doing everything that was asked of him, would be dismissed dishonorably from the Federation. He would leave Starfleet in disgrace. And both Deanna Troi and William Riker Troi would resign from Starfleet after their son came under a mysterious ailment and Starfleet Medical refused to give the life-saving treatment. They would retire to a backwater planet as well. Was Wolf 359 preventable? Or worse, was it a planned event? Perhaps this was a Borg Federation alliance. Is it any surprise that the construction and war contracts went to both the Klingons, a strong ally of the Federation, and the Bajorans, a people beloved by Picard? How likely is it that this just occurred by happenstance when Starfleet was starting to lose control of its own territory? Or maybe it is as the official story goes. The flagship of the Federation just happened to meet an all-powerful entity that just randomly introduced them to an all-powerful cybernetic power that decided to attack the Federation and randomly destroyed 39 ships, leaving the Federation completely defenseless, even if you could say that it had defenses at all. And then somehow was destroyed by someone telling the collective to go to sleep. You decide.